think my computer struggles with loading that and running this at the same time. So I'm also recording Blackboard, again, all the recordings. So yeah, be aware that this is now being recorded. Okay, so one thing that I use, or this is what I recommend for all of you, is to bring in a source of your image. So whatever object you chose, if you can find an orthographic view of it, it would be quite helpful. If you can't, like some of the cylindrical images work better as they are coming in as a source image for your master sketch. And again, I mean, I guess a reminder that I'm not collecting the SolidWorks CAD for this, so this can be messy and rough. All my advice is really to just, not only for education, but also to just hopefully make your life easier in terms of like modifying the file, editing it, if we need to tweak proportion and stuff. That's why it helps to have a robust Jenga tower, so that if you build it and bring it into KeyShot and the proportion looks wrong, it's not a pain in the ass to go back and edit it. So I do encourage that you follow what was laid out in the previous projects. But yeah, so one thing I don't show in any of the demos, some of it is you can go back and review demos from projects 1 and 2, but is importing an image. So the way to do that is a refresher, and I'll post this. This is the reason I'm recording this, is I'll also just throw this on YouTube at some point after this class. So to add an image, you want to make a new sketch on whichever plane makes sense, typically the front. So I have the front plane selected, create a sketch. You want to use the sketch picture option. And so now, right, since we just talked about Darth Vader, this is perfect. You navigate to your image, you bring it in. Here again, you want to think about where you position it. If you think back to project 1, we created the bounding box first. So that's another thing to consider here is scale. So, I mean, that's something you could do, right? This is a webcam. You could measure the average, or I'm assuming it's like a security camera or a web camera, that you could measure like existing products to get an idea of how tall this might actually be. So that's one way to start. But yeah, once you bring this in, right, align it with the origin however you want. I mean, when in doubt, I typically just do the origin at the base. Now that I think about it, for a camera like this, it probably wouldn't be, there's a chance that the center of the camera would be aligned with the origin. It really doesn't matter, those to your own preference. I'll just do this. So just wanted to remind you that that's how they're brought in, is sketch picture. You scale with the corners. I think that's pretty intuitive. The one thing I would remind you of is the transparency here. You can select full image. And I like to do that just so it's not dominating. Now I do always recommend that your source image is in a separate sketch. So I exit that sketch and now I create a new one on this front plane. And now here is when I can start to kind of like, you know, trace what I'm seeing in the image. So yeah, just wanted to remind you all. And again, I recommend that everyone do this, that if at all possible, find something. If you have the object in real life, take orthographic photos, do what you can. This will help with this will make your life easier with your accuracy and your proportion. It will just totally take the guessing game away. The other thing I want to mention in all of the demos is you will obviously see my dimensions, you'll see my numbers. Be advised, and I say this a lot, but be advised that like my numbers are completely made up. I have no intel. My goal in the demo is to show you how to build it, not the exact value and stuff to build. So I am providing you a roadmap, is my intent. I am providing you help, but I'm not necessarily giving you, like, telling you exactly what to do and how to do it. So it is up to you to judge by eye. There is a good chance in some of the demos, many of the demos, that the proportion is in fact way off. So I'm relying on you to use the roadmap that I have provided or suggested to then take a more refined approach than I did to build your model. And of course, all that said too, like, the roadmap is simply that. You can, if you have a better way to build it, or you would prefer to approach a different way, you of course are welcome to. This is intended to be help. It's not a mandate by any means. you know, so I think some of you, it depends on your form and what have you. So is that clear? That again is, so if you see me like type in a value of like 0.5, a radius of like 0.5, it doesn't mean that your radius should be 0.5. Again, I'm also not collecting the file. So it's all a judge by eye. If you have orthographics of the model or a physical object that you can measure, that would be the best way to do this. All right. Cool. Good disclaimer. Any questions on any of that so far? Sounding no. Cool. Okay. We definitely got into a lot of surfacing here. I know some of you expressed an interest in learning surfacing. If you want to learn surfacing or review a demo that covers surfacing to some extent, look at Sam's file. This is all going to be surfaced. Also look at Maddie's file or Maddie's recording. So, you know, look in the recording. Let's see, both of these are in the video of names starting with M through Z. This is all surfaced around here, and this is surfacing here. So right now I just want to take some brief time to talk about some new tools that I kept recommending people use. And some of these are just simply not possible without surfacing. So I just want to take a minute to talk about surfacing here. So surfacing is, there's good news and bad news about it. The good news is it's almost, all the commands are almost identical to the solid body commands. So here you have extrude, revolve, sweep, so on and so forth. Surfacing, you have extrude, revolve, sweep, loft, so on and so forth. And they all work basically the same way as far as the setup for the components. The main difference, and this is something I caught myself saying a lot and explaining quite a bit, is the main difference between a solid body and a surface, to use an analogy, would be to think of a solid body like a piece of clay and to think of a surface like a piece of paper. I think that's obvious. I know you all use Rhino and CAD and other forms. So a piece of clay, the reason we've been in solid bodies up until this point, it's just a bit quicker. It's like when you're learning a new program, it's a little bit easier to grasp because you're working in whole forms. Whereas with surfaces, you're working with sheets of paper. There is a need at the end of surfacing to transform it back into a piece of clay. So that either means combining all the pieces of paper into a closed form that then gets essentially, quote, filled with clay, or taking the sheet of paper and adding a thickness to it. So telling the sheets of paper to bump out by 2 millimeters all across the board. So there's like an added step, which makes it a little bit more difficult to teach if, like, you know, we're already counting each and every, you know, think about the tutorials early on. They're like, what, maybe 17 to 20 steps. With surfacing, that would, I mean, I guess at best would maybe be like 5 to 10 more steps, but that's almost like, you know, a percentage more that adds complexity that's not needed at that point. Now, the reason some of these objects are surfaced, like the reason this one has to be surfaced, is because all of this blending is so, everything's just blended. There's no hard edges. So it needs to all kind of mesh together. And I think it would be possible to do this as a solid body. It would just be more complicated. When SolidWorks is treating one line at a time and one surface at a time, you can have a much more heavy hand in manual control of how you want it to behave and what you want it to do. It's also more forgiving. It tends to resolve forms and lofts that otherwise wouldn't be resolved as a hard shape. So that's why we get into surfacing here. So I'm trying to think, there's really no planned demo here, but I'm just going to revolve this. So like I mentioned, surfacing commands are very similar to solid body commands. So in this case, I load the revolve. Here it works all the same way. There's a center line. In this case, here's the feature. It's just a single line, and you can see it's revolving just that line. It's behaving as you might expect. Now, obviously, if this were a solid body, the difference is we would probably, and I'm not recommending that Darth Vader be surfaced. I don't think Darth Vader needs to be. I'm just using it as an example since I'm in this file. Obviously, a solid body revolve would be like this. We have the closed shape. Right, so this here's, right, obviously, I think that difference, I think, is clear, I hope. And feel free to raise a hand at any time or interrupt me. Okay, so like I mentioned, once you surface, you need at some point to go from the sheet of paper to the solid body. And there's a couple ways to do that. So, like I said, one way is to just take the sheet of paper and add thickness to that. That command is called surprisingly thicken. So we can select this and say thicken. And here you just simply you can punch in the value, right? 1/2 inch. And here you can just say, do you want it to go outwards or do you want it to go inwards? Or do you want it to go both directions? And check that box. And now suddenly it goes from a surface to a solid body. Now you'll notice the one thing with thicken is that this edge, I believe, is always perpendicular to this line. So you can see here it's in fact pointing down and in. It's not flat. And sometimes this leads to weird results. I think I recommended thickening for some of you. Always the solution, if you have a weird edge on a thicken, is to make the surface longer than it needs to be, right? Let's say for some reason you wanted this to be flat and not like dipping down like that. The solution is always to make the surface taller than you need to be and then throw in an extrude cut on here. Right, and now we have a nice flat surface. So sometimes that's the solution there. So that's one option to go from surface world to solid body world. The other option is to make an enclosed form and zip it up into a piece of clay. So there's different ways to do that. I'll talk about some different surface techniques now. So here on my top plane, I'm going to create a sketch. Alt-S, right, gets me in sketch world. I do some of the commands fast in the tutorial. So if I do something and you're not sure and I didn't speak to what I did, definitely email me, ask me. But typically, like the commands I'm doing are Alt-S to enter sketch world and Alt-N to rotate the view so it faces me. Yeah, that was upspeak. I felt like I had more to say, but I realized I didn't. That was the end of that sentence. So now on the top plane, I'm going to take this circle and turn it, or this edge and turn it into a circle. So I selected that with convert entities. So there's two different ways to cap, or sorry, yeah, there's different ways to cap an open surface like this. So this is one way. We have a sketch of a circle. In my surface command, I can select planar surface. And what this does, it takes whatever shape you have. And let's see if I can just illustrate this in a kind of silly way over here. It takes whatever shape you have and it just turns it into a sheet of paper that's that shape. Right? Hopefully that makes sense. Another way to do it is with a fill. So here's a command called filled surface. I also recommend some of you use this. Basically, filled surface, the way it works, it's a patch boundary. You select edges and it basically fills the gap. So this is kind of a boring example because there's only one edge. But you select that edge and hopefully you can see that there's a bit of a yellow hue across the entire top. I can click the checkbox and now we have a surface on here. So now we have this form that's closed on both sides. One of the things to be aware of with a surface is if the edge is blue. Yeah, Sam, question.
So if you basically cap that surface cylinder on both ends, does it now count as a solid or is it still a surface?
It's still a surface. There needs to be one more step.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. I mean, so the way we know it's still a surface and it's not a body is if you look at the circle, it's blue. And, or sorry, the edge is blue. I hope you can all see that. It's a very like thin cyan line running around the edge. That means that these are two separate surfaces. So that's one thing to note. The command that we want is knit. So I'm actually going to do this in 2 stages just to illustrate a point. So it's in the surface tab. To me, it always looks like a vest. It looks like a life jacket. You can select the top face and the side face. And right now we're just going to start with this. We're going to click on knit. And the reason I want to show you that is now that these two surfaces are knit together, that edge I was calling out as blue before is now black. So now we know it's one joined surface, and we can see that here with the knit. If I select it, it selects both. Here, to illustrate the difference, the bottom is blue. So that's a separate surface currently, like that. Now, the way you go to a solid body is you actually have to, and here I'll just load this again from scratch, is you want to use this knit command. So you want to select all of these 3 surfaces, and you want to, it's an important step to say create solid, to check this box and then check the green check. Now you'll notice here we have a new body called surface knit 2, and it is created by this command. Now the reason why a solid body is important, it allows you to do things like shelling it, right? So now we can have, if you need to turn this into a container of some kind, you're right, you can fillet it. I guess you can fillet a knit surface too, so this isn't as critical. Sometimes SolidWorks can be fussy sometimes. Sometimes it'll work better, a fillet will work better on a solid body than it will a surface. But I just want to illustrate that it is possible to do a knit without this box being checked, and it looks like a solid body, right? For all intents and purposes, this looks like a solid body, but you'll notice here it's still a surface. And this becomes a problem when I try to cut this. If I just draw this and I say, I exit my sketch, that's funny. I can't even extrude cut because there's no solid body to cut here. So that's like a common, I would imagine a common error in early surfacing is not realizing it's not a solid body. It looks like one, but it's not. The way to verify again is to look at the top here. Look at your solid bodies folder. If it's empty, there's no solid bodies. So here, like again, right now, extruded cut is grayed out. Seems like something's wrong with the program. We're not sure why not. If we go here and edit this, create solid, now we can extrude cut. So now I can select this, extrude cut through all both. And the reasoning is now there's clay inside of the model that it can create this face here. I think that's really all I want to say about surfacing. And again, for each of you that I recommended surfacing, I walked through the steps. I said, this is how I did it. This is what I would do. I was very aware that surfacing has not yet been covered. I just know that there's been a lot of interest expressed in it. So I just wanted to give a brief overview. I also wanted a chance to answer questions in case you do need to surface. You can just have some kind of overview to fall back on. I think the last surface command I want to mention is there is an extrude, right? So here's a line. Again, works as advertised, similar to the other extrude. I think that's all I want to talk about. I think for some of you, actually, here we go. For some of you, we use offset surface. So here's an application where we might want to use it. I don't know. I'm always open to feedback on this class. If you all think it would have been beneficial to learn surfacing sooner, maybe there's a way to work it in sooner. It's always a mix, right? Because I think some people are interested in it. Some people maybe feel the beginning of class is already as open, it's already maybe there's a lot high demand on stuff. So introducing even more content might be less than desirable. Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, open to that anytime as an email or discussion, but also that's sort of what the end of year teacher feedback is valuable for me. So another command is this offset surface. The way this works is you just select a face and it basically copies that face. So here you can see the value, right, or the distance value is punching this surface off from the main body by a certain amount. You could also set it to be 0. And that literally just copies that face. I definitely suggested this 0 for some of you. Yeah, I think on the one I can think of right now is Lafayette's file here. In order to get this form to intersect, I recommended offsetting this once this is created as a loft, offsetting these surfaces or these faces to cut away at the form below. So if you're curious what that looks like, you can review his video, Lafayette's video. So yeah, there is surface offset is just another tool. I think that covers I think cut with surface is also some stuff. So I guess here, maybe to just cap off the surface discussion, here I did an offset a little bit larger. I can now load cut with surface. We've actually used cut with surface before. I think we did it with, did we use it? I feel like I've used it to split an object in half. Maybe not in one of the demos. I could be wrong. But here I'm going to select the surface that we wish to cut with. And here there's a little arrow in here. You just kind of select the direction you want it to cut. So here we want it to cut away. And in this case, I want it to cut this long protruding piece. And now we have a piece that is contoured to this piece below it. So this is useful if we were to, for example, instead of this dummy objects, make a logo. So here's a line. If I select the line and select this text tool, I don't think anyone had to do this. But this might be useful for project 4 if you want some of these details. So I made a line, I selected the line, I clicked on the A icon here, I typed my Noah's logo, I unchecked the box that says use document font. I can now choose, you know, whatever logo I want, set the height, 0.5 maybe. Let's see if this works. So the cut didn't work. I think I just have to reselect. Let's see if this works now. Reselect the body. Oh, that's because none of these are merged. I thought it was a merge. But this is a way to put make it look like an embossed logo on something within SolidWorks, right? That follows the contour of the shape and form. For some of you, I talk about bringing in vector. Like you can find vector logos online if you have like Sony or whatever. The key there is you want to bring it into Illustrator, output the vector as a DWG file. And then I think I started to show this one of the days that we were running out of time. So here's a Paisley example. So here's the DWG file open. The day that I tried to show this quickly, I missed a step. It was a bit clunky. You want to uncheck this box, this import as reference. You want to uncheck that. This is the settings that you want here. And then you just click finish. And it brings in, this was originally a vector, it now brings it in like this. So you can do this with branded logos and treat it the same way. If you have a branded logo that's embossed or debossed, embossed, once you bring this in, you can simply just select everything and edit copy. And then in your part file, you can take a new plane and edit paste. And the last step you want to do here is select everything. And sometimes this will pop up. But if it doesn't, you can right click and you want to look for this icon, an A with a little like star in the top left, make block. This is the equivalent of like grouping something in InDesign. So now it's all gray, but the nice thing is now it all stays together. So it's not going to separate or get distorted or anything. The other nice thing with a block is you can change the scale very quickly with this parameters here. So this is if you have a logo or any embossment, deboss, emboss, that's complex, I would use that technique. But again, I don't know, for the most part, I think if I observed that, I made a mention in your recording, but just in case I didn't. It's also worth mentioning that if you have a question, definitely if you have a question, just email me. But another way to approach this is like if you see something similar in your object to someone else's object. So like, for example, I go to a little bit more detail in Michael's object about how to do the chord, just because the object is a pretty straightforward revolve. The chord is probably the most complex thing here. Like Jishin, I didn't quite go into the detail with the chord for you because it's just kind of going straight off. But if you want to like see how to do that, or if anyone wants to learn how to do a chord, like Michael's video would be a good one to look at. So that's another way to use this resource. Is like if you see something in one of these objects that's like, I wonder how to build that, check out the video, and hopefully I cover it. If it's maybe one of the like standout points, it's a good chance that I addressed it in the video. Or just email me. Okay, any questions on any of that stuff so far? I think I have 2 more things I want to talk about, but I want to pause and offer question answers. All right, I'm going to take that as a resounding no, which is cool. Yeah, Christina.
Do you by any chance have the file of the objects, the images, and the name of people who chose the objects, so we can take a look and see
Oh,
what's convenient to watch?
great question. I'm glad you asked that. And no, I don't. So I appreciate that question. I will upload this folder with the names to Box. I will do that after the demo. Thank you for that. I will make a note of that right now. Cool. Yeah, good question. Okay, the 2 last things I want to talk about. It's actually here, Noah's logo. In all my infinite narcissism, will be a good option for this demo too. So this is on the right plane. Yeah. So I'm going to create a new sketch on the right plane. I'm going to copy over this logo. So I'm going to just, oops, I'm going to select it and just say convert entities. Oh, maybe you can't convert entities on a text. Well, learn something new every day. Here, how about let's try the Paisley? No, I'm making this too complicated. One of the other tools that I talk about quite a bit, I'm just going to draw a sketch like this. It's a tool called Splitline. Good question, Gina. Right now, where are the files with the recordings? Oh, do you mean like where are the videos? They're on YouTube, and I have links posted in the Blackboard announcement, but I'll post them in chat when I turn you all loose. Does that answer your question? The images I'm going to post on Blackboard. Yeah, cool. Good question. So one of the other tools I mentioned quite a bit is the Splitline tool. Now the Splitline tool basically creates an edge. Do you see this like black line here, right? This is an edge. Splitline creates an edge. It's either, if it's not located here for you, it's under surfaces and under curves. Yeah. So this is another phrase I feel like I caught myself saying a lot. If a solid body is clay and a surface is paper, then a curve is like a piece of string, right? So we're just kind of breaking it down. I don't quite know why Splitline is in curves, to be honest, but that's where it is. Here in the sketch, if I load it, typically this is the default projection in the current sketch. You select the face that you want it basically, again, it creates a black line, it creates an edge. So you select the face that you want the edge to happen on. So here's this line. If I click the green check, you can see that the line is like painted onto this face. And this is, I don't know, helpful sometimes, depending on the circumstance. I feel like it's often used for like, I know I used it on Phoebe's file. I think I did. Yeah, I definitely did, to like do this detail. And because there's kind of like, there's this line that like offsets inwards, often there'll be a time where like I'll create a sketch on this top face, I'll offset this, and then I might do like a split line onto this top face here. And this gives us like a surface to push down or play with or delete or whatever. So sometimes, again, if I recommended split line, I showed that full process. For some of you with curves, I don't want to get into it because it's not as many of you, but project curve is like you take 2 sketches and it combines them in a way. So for example, again, if you want to learn more about that, that would be in Michael's. That's how I created a chord that goes away from us and is bouncing like this. It's 2 sketches that kind of project onto each other to make that complex line. Helix and spiral, this is used to make threading. So if you want to learn how to use that, it would be helpful to review Maddie's file here to create this threading. Okay, I think that's all I want to say. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. There's always one more thing. This one is the last one I can think of at this time. But I know none of you trust me at this point that it's the last one. I use quite a bit this command here, split. Typically, I introduce split a lot sooner. I made a decision this semester to just stick with extrude cut because it was like a familiar thing. Extrude cut, like a thin extrude cut, works just fine. Split here, so sorry, not to be confusing, but right now I'm back to this sketch here. I've undone the split line on the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line to do a split. So we could use this line to do a cut or a thin cut, but what we can do is we can select the sketch, load the split command, and here you can see it's loaded here, sketch 13. And what you need to do is click in this box down here and just select one of the two bodies on either side here. So in this case, I selected the back, it turns it orange. You'll notice more boxes appear. As long as you're splitting one face off, that's all you need to do. And then you can click on the green check mark. And now we have two bodies here. So it's kind of like a zero thickness cut. Here, if I just illustrate the point as like an exploded view, I can just move body that away. So I definitely use split quite a bit. The weird thing with split, and I mentioned this with some of you, but not all of you, is that it does not consume the sketch for whatever reason. I honestly really don't know why it doesn't consume the sketch, but here's the sketch, here's the split. You can also split with surfaces, you can split with planes, whatever you select. I think that's it. The main takeaway that I just want to repeat again is please see all of the advice as just a roadmap. Ask questions, deviate if you feel you need to deviate from it. And do not take any of my measurements at face value. Like I am building at no scale. I would encourage you all to try to attempt a relative scale. I think it will help you. So like Yuanqing, like look at headphones and find the diameter of an earpiece and start there, right? Xavier, look at tape, so on and so forth for each of you. I think that will help get a good starting point. Things like this that we don't really know the scale, it's a little bit harder. But that said, again, I'm not collecting the file, so the scale, again, the reason I'm harping on scale is I think it will help you to base it on a real object. Cool. Okay, any questions on anything?